In the book of Ezekiel, there's this really fierce prophecy about total annihilation. It's a stark warning to an ancient kingdom that made a fatal mistake. They celebrated their neighbor's destruction. Today, we're going to unpack how that celebration led directly to them being, well, erased from history.
The prophecy kicks off with this absolutely terrifying image. A glittering sword drawn not just for a fight, but for a slaughter. I mean, this isn't just a warning, it's basically a death sentence. So who was this for? And what could they have possibly done to deserve something like that?
Well, to answer that, we've got to jump back in time and meet the people this prophecy was aimed at, the Ammonites.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the immediate connection to our world. The Ammonites were an ancient people, and get this, they were actually relatives of the Israelites. And their capital city, a place called Rabbah, is a place you can still find on a map today. It's Ammon, the capital of Jordan.
But here's the thing. Just because they were family didn't mean they were friends, not even close. Their history was just this constant cycle of conflict. We're talking centuries of bad blood, from sieges and rebellions to the eventual capture of their capital by Israel's own King David. This wasn't some simple disagreement. It was a deep historical rivalry. So, what was the final straw? The prophecy in Ezekiel points to a very specific crime, calling it their reproach. And this wasn't about some ancient battle, no. This was all about how they reacted to a nearby tragedy. And this, right here, gets to the absolute heart of the issue. In 586 BC, the kingdom of Judah was utterly destroyed by the Babylonian Empire. Jerusalem was sacked, its sacred temple was profaned, and its people were dragged off into exile. It was a complete national catastrophe. So how did their relatives, the Ammonites, react? As you can see, they rejoiced. They mocked their cousin's suffering.
And this reproach went even deeper. They didn't just celebrate, they got opportunistic. They listened to their own prophets who were telling them, don't worry, you guys are safe from Babylon. On top of that, historical sources suggest their king even encouraged the assassination of the governor that Babylon had put in charge of Judah, just twisting the knife and making a terrible situation even worse.
It was exactly this deep-seated hostility, this opportunism, that provoked the prophecy. So now let's look a little closer at the verdict that was handed down through Ezekiel.
And you really have to pay attention to the language here. The prophecy doesn't just predict destruction, it actually describes the destroyers. They're called brutish, sure, but also skillful. So we're not talking about a chaotic mob. No, this is a disciplined, professional, and utterly ruthless force. The language here is just so absolute. The Ammonites wouldn't just be defeated, their entire nation would become fuel for the fire of war. Their blood would literally soak their own land. It's a prediction of complete and total erasure. Okay, so the prophecy was delivered in pretty stark terms. Now for the big question, how did it play out in recorded history? After Jerusalem fell, did that glittering sword ever actually turn towards Ammon?
You bet it did. Those brutish men and skillful to destroy, well, they had a name: the Babylonian army. That metaphorical sword from Ezekiel's vision was, in reality, the unstoppable military machine of King Nebuchadnezzar II.
And history shows that's exactly what went down, just a few years after they destroyed Jerusalem. Around 582 BC, Nebuchadnezzar turned his armies east, right across the Jordan River, and launched campaigns against the kingdoms there. And yep, that included Ammon. The very nation that celebrated Judah's fall was soon facing the exact same conqueror.
But the prophecy made one final and honestly pretty chilling prediction, one that went way beyond just military conquest. It promised that the Ammonites would be erased from memory itself.
This is maybe the most profound part of the whole thing. Thou shalt be no more remembered. I mean, how does an entire nation, with a capital city that we just said still exists, just disappear from memory?
Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was more like a slow fade. First, Babylon comes in and ends their independence. Then, under the Persians, they stop being a kingdom and become just another province. And finally, after Alexander the Great, Greek culture just floods the region. Their capital city gets renamed Philadelphia. And over the centuries, the Ammonites as a distinct people just get absorbed, their unique identity fading away. So, in the end, the prophecy frames this entire historical event in a very specific way. Babylon wasn't just some random empire on the march. It was seen as an instrument of justice,
a sword, if you will, used against any nation, including Ammon, that was guilty of arrogance and of celebrating the suffering of others. And all of this leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought. Remember their capital, Rabbah? It's still there, as the city of Ammon. The land is there, the buildings are there. But the Ammonite people? They're gone. It really makes you wonder, what is a nation's true legacy? Is it the ground they hold or the character they show? According to this prophecy, one of those can last forever, while the other can be completely wiped from memory.